any of the disciples were concerned, when, the ones that weren't in the inner circle, whether any of them were concerned about that. It doesn't record that. But I can just imagine, Sister Vera, you know what I'm saying? He handpicked all of us. He told us all to come and follow him. We all have given up everything to follow him. And then, Jesus, Peter, and James are the only one, or Jesus, Jesus, Peter, James, and John are the only ones on the Mount of Transfiguration. And none of the other disciples get to witness that phenomenal experience. Can you imagine if they came back and just seeped it out to one of the other disciples, what they might have been thinking, like, man, because Peter said it's good for us to be here. They might have been thinking, well, shoot, I wish I would have been there. I didn't tell me. They could have been. They could now, and I'm human minds. I know one of us would have been. I know there's other times that Jesus did some other things. He had to put some people out of Peter's mother-in-law's house. He had to put some people out there. He only kept certain people in the house with him when he did that miracle. Because they're known as the inner circle, maybe some of the other disciples could have been thinking, well, it could have been a little jealousy in there. We know Judas already had his own plans. We know there's some other things going on. We got to remember that these disciples were human. They were human. They were not beyond the things that we're capable of doing today. You know what I'm saying? I know we want to look at it as a really, really holy and spiritual thing, but these men were human. These were human beings. And so I was looking at this, and because they were known as the inner circle, I started looking up, I started looking into the inner circle. I specifically started looking into the inner circle. And I found some things about the inner circle. And some of the things I found about the inner circle, it was so interesting. There's two things. And I already have some things because I have the books on them that I've already read or been reading or whatever. And it talks about, it kind of gives the analogy from Jesus having the inner circle, because Jesus is the leader. Yeah, we need to understand that. He is the leader. And Peter, James, and John, believe it or not, as many mistakes as Peter made, are a leader. We understand that, right? There are leaders, and then there's the leader. So Jesus was the leader, and he was following God. And then Peter, James, and John, they were a leader. Okay? The reason why I'm saying that is because I don't want them to be mistaken for the leader. They weren't the leader. They were just a leader. So it was, when I started looking into this inner circle, it starts to talk about President Obama. When a man becomes president of the United States, he has to select a cabinet. That cabinet, Valentine, would be similar to what Peter, James, and John was to Jesus. That cabinet is his inner circle. They are the only ones they are his advisors when he's getting ready to make a major decision or getting ready to make a major change or whatever it is he's getting ready to do. Even though he is the leader, he has an inner circle around him. That inner circle is what Peter, James, and John was to Jesus. Do y'all get that? Do you get where I'm going with that? So President Obama is the leader, but he still has a group of advisors around him. And this is John C. Maxwell. So I'm a lover of John C. Maxwell because he's anointed in leadership, and he's a Christian. So he always comes from a biblical perspective. So he was talking about how Obama strategically chose his inner circle, and why the inner circle is important for leaders. Why especially the leader. This is really, really what I'm speaking of is regarding the leader. So he said that the other presidents had made several mistakes when they chose their inner circle. So he was saying that because of the mistakes they made, it caused his integrity to be compromised. Like those presidents who chose their inner circle but didn't choose their inner circle strategically. Because it does matter who you hang around. I know that back in the days, Bishop used to say all the time, I think he still says every once in a while, he says association brings about assimilation. So it does matter who we hang around. And so here it was talking about President Obama demonstrated that he understood. He calls it the law of the inner circle. He said the leader's potential is determined by those closest to him or her. So Obama had to choose the best of the best, but he also had to choose, what this is saying, that he also chose in areas where he was weak. So if Obama didn't know a lot about war tactics, when it was time to choose the portion of his inner circle that was responsible for that, he had to choose the best of the best. Because he's going to have to confer with this person when he gets ready to make a decision in that area. You understand? So it is important who was hanging around Jesus. I think it's very important what he was instilling into them and because he was building them up and grooming them. And what was he prepping them for? Because he was leaving. And when he was leaving, he said, greater works that I'm doing, you're going to do. And so he had to get them prepared for what he was talking about. So it does matter who was hanging around. I think it's important enough for us to dive in and find out why he selected who he selected. And so it says here that it says past presidents learned the hard way that failures of the leaders' trusted advisors can bring disaster. And it says during the Clinton administration, investigations into the conduct of 5 cabinet members eroded public perception of the president's judgment. Why did it erode public perception of the president's judgment? Because the president selected them. Okay? So what they did, it made them look, and this is why Moses pleaded on behalf of the people. He said, God, don't kill the people. He said, what did he say? If you kill the people, they're going to talk about you. That's what he said. So it's important that what happens to us as leaders, it has a perception on the leader. You understand what I'm saying? Where I'm going with that. So it says here that those indictments and allegations gave ammunition to Clinton's foes and cast doubt on his character, especially after the Monica Lewinsky scandal came to light. And then it says, likewise, President Bush, he did the same thing. He appointed as head of FEMA Michael Brown and failed to provide strong federal leadership in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Now, he appointed Michael Brown, I believe, because they had a friendship. Not because of his knowledge. Not because of the knowledge he could provide into that position. Not because he was qualified to do that position. Because it says here that inexperienced in emergency management, Brown was overwhelmed by the crisis. During the height of the disaster, he fretted about finding a dog sitter and fussed about his attire. In the middle of the Hurricane Katrina, who cares what you got on? And who cares about your little puppy? So it says, do you know how many dogs was in that water? So it says his unpreparedness and inaction left the Bush administration vulnerable to scathing accusations of neglect and indifference. And I'm going to show you how much it impacted the perception of Bush. When he just recently went on an interview on the Oprah Winfrey show, they said, I'm going somewhere with this. I know y'all probably think, where is she going? When he just recently went on an interview on the Oprah Winfrey show, he talked about that was one of the most pivotal times in his life and one of the most heartbreaking because he was judged by that because the rapper came out and said Bush hates black people, and all of that came about because of the FEMA guy. It was important who he had in his cabinet, who he had surrounding him. This caused embarrassment to him. Okay? So it says there are 5 questions to ask when forming an inner circle. And no doubt, Jesus looks beyond what we see in the natural. And he looks into our hearts. And he knows what we're capable of. And that's why it's important for the leader to be in tune with God. Because then he's making decisions we might not necessarily understand, but he is in tune with God. And we wouldn't understand. Now, just be honest, y'all. Let's just really be honest. Peter just was rebuked six days before the Mount of Transfiguration. He said, Satan, get behind me. He called him Satan. 6 days later, he said, Peter, come here. I want to take you up on the Mount of Transfiguration. And Peter's up on the mountain saying, it's good for us to be here. Now, as one of his other disciples, wouldn't you be like, well, why did Peter get to go see that? And you just rebuked him. But God knows things that we don't know. You understand what I'm saying? So it says here there are 5 questions to ask when forming an inner circle because it's important for leaders to have an inner circle. So that they're not bearing all the burden of everything on their own. And when I was reading this, I really, I'm looking at me. I'm looking at who who's the inner circle, I'm trying to relate all this. At the same time, I'm thinking this is very good information.